Okay, here's some work on problem number 52 in section 2.6. This is about looking at the limit as h goes to 0 of 1 minus the cosine of h, all divided by h squared. It says first to take a look at numerical approximation. So remember, limits are near, not at. If you plugged in 0, you'd have undefined. And let me call this f of h, and also from the left and the right. So maybe I want to plug in, say, negative 0.1, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in, what, 1 minus cosine of negative 0.1, all divided by negative 0.1 squared. Let me put parentheses to be on the safe side. Squared. Okay, so let's see. I have e to the negative times 10 to the negative 0.4. Let's see. My mode is in radians. It should be in radians. Is in degrees. So I'll punch that, and I'll come back out. I'll run the same thing again. That's what I'm looking for. 0.4996. Wow, that's really close to a half. You could do the same thing with what? Minus the cosine of negative 0.0 to the nearest hundredth. But I really expect us to get the same thing. Let's just see what happens. Oh, wow. Yeah, negative. So this is from the negative side. It's pretty clear, even to 5 decimal places of accuracy, if you're rounding, that you're getting a half. Okay, well, what about, say, 0.01? Well, we could do the same sort of thing. 1 minus the cosine of 0.01 divided by 0.01 squared. Can you see I get that exact same thing? And you could keep going, but this makes a pretty clear estimate that this is a half. Well, how do we prove that? What do they mean by proving it? Well, here's what they mean. They say there should be an algebraic way to see what's really going on here. Well, and this is a pretty classic technique, because you see what we have here is we have an indeterminate form. If you plug in 0, you have 0 over 0. And so we're looking for a way to cancel something. Well, what I have here, 1 minus cosine of h. If I multiply that times 1 plus cosine of h, that's a conjugate. Something nice is going to happen. So I can't change the value, so I've got to multiply by that over itself. But what's going to happen since I multiplied like that is, can you see 1 times 1 is going to give me 1. I'm going to get a positive cosine of h, a minus cosine of h, which will cancel, and then a minus cosine of h times cosine of h, 1 minus cosine squared h over h squared times 1 plus cosine of h. Now, this is one of those identities, whenever you see a sine squared or a cosine squared, you should be thinking, sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. That's just one of those things that you want to remember. Can you see that if you moved the cosine squared over to the other side, 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared? So really using that identity, some people call it the Pythagorean identity, some people call that particular one the fundamental identity. The numerator is sine squared of h over h squared. Now, I'm cooking with some pieces that I actually know that I should recognize. So now I'm going to break this into the product of 3 limits that I know exist. So the limit as h goes to 0 of sine of h. Now this is sine squared, so I'm going to have sine of h, and 1. So sine of h over h times the limit as h goes to 0 of sine of h over h times the limit as h goes to 0 of 1 over 1 plus cosine of h? Well, this is one of those limits we know. Sine h over h is 1. This piece is 1. This piece, we can just use substitution to see that cosine of 0 is 1, so we have 1 over 1 plus 1. That's a half. Exactly what we got through the estimate.